Thank you very much, Mr. Anise Khan, Chairman Valor of Bangladesh, for your wonderful welcome note. Hereby, we inaugurate our Strategy Summit 2021, presented by Mutual Trust Bank, powered by IPDC Finance, supported by Ispahani, and in association with Zahedee Foundation. So let us proceed with our first session called Fintech and MFS, which is excelling through innovation, transformation, focus, and productivity that must be nurtured to maximize their impact and effectiveness. And this panel's proud sponsor is Mastercard. So let us start with an introductory video, then to the discussions.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to our show this evening, hosted by Valor of Bangladesh, titled Fintech and MFS, a very topical subject matter indeed. Over here, we have very distinguished and panelists. Let me introduce them to you one by one. We have over here Mr. Almas Kabir, President BASIS, welcome. We have Mr. Kamal Quadir, CEO bKash, welcome Mr. Kamal. We have Mr. Rahel Ahmed, CEO Nagad, welcome Mr. Rahel. And we have Mr. Sajid Rahman, founder and CCO of Digitech and Healthcare Solutions. Sajid is also a general partner of IPDC and also an avid investor in tech companies. Welcome to you all. It's a very wide and broad topic. So what we'd like to maybe have a trail of conversation is in the business leaders who are running the fintech companies in Bangladesh. Maybe we need to learn from you and hear from you what is the current landscape is like in terms of the type of transaction that we're doing, the volume of transactions we're doing, the customer base. And for this to go to the next level, what are the infrastructural and policy level supports that we need? And where that over the last 1 year, the size and the volume of transactions have increased a lot because of COVID. Under the current leadership of the government today, we have almost 100% phone connection penetration. We have 112 million with internet users. E-commerce transactions almost 20 billion a year. And we have 44 out of 60 banks providing internet banking. And about 102 registered users of MFS. Daily average volume is about 18 billion. So that gives you an industry perspective. So maybe at the very beginning, I'd like to invite Mr. Kamal to talk about the current landscape of the industry and also talk a bit about his company and explain the type of transactions that you're seeing and take it to the next level what kind of infrastructure policy level support that you need. Over to you, Mr. Kamal.
Thank you, Adil Islam. I really appreciate you inviting me and the organizers. So thank you for considering me to speak here today. And distinguished other panelists, particularly Almas Bhai, Rahel Bhai, and Sajid Bhai. So welcome to this show. One thing that before we move into the broader picture, I just thought it's important to lay out what has happened in last 10 years. The service started in 2011, following the lead Bangladesh Bank took in shaping this industry, and it was a certain political decision that we need to take Bangladesh towards a digitalized economy, and central bank responded that vision and tried to create a framework for that. So what was, if you look at the initial, the way it started is the first step was giving giving the companies licenses. And then shortly after, like within a couple of months, central bank came up with the guidelines and then the regulation. So from the very beginning, it was under a very structured regulatory arrangement that this ecology has evolved. So if I speak from our point of view today, we have 52 million uniquely verified individual customer, all verified by the national ID card system of Bangladesh. And if you look at the services, it initially started with cash in and cash out because people did not have other ways to spend the resources or the money. So, but subsequently the ATM connectivity came in, all kind of utility bill payments, gas, electricity, water, and I'm talking about our service here. And then other convenience generating bill payment like internet, telephone, TV. And then one interesting thing happened recently was digital loan. So central bank looked at that you have this all these PSPs, they're maintaining wallets, but if they want to get loan, the loan could be in the books of the banks, and MFS operators like ourselves could be a channel. So digital loan has been a pilot initiative. In our case, it has been with DCT Bank in Bangladesh. And then good to see Sajid Bhai is here. Insurance collection is one of the things that we have been doing for his organization. And then bank connectivity, 36 banks have been connected. My apology, 26 banks. 26 banks have been connected, so you can bring money from bank to bKash. So as the ecology evolved, many of the customers don't want to go to the agent point. So the way it started, if you look at it this way, that someone's support staff was getting paid by bKash, and then when the household is trying to pay that person, then they're saying, I don't want to go to the agent point. Can I bring the money to my wallet straight from the bank? So this is just an example I was mentioning. So now from 26 banks, you can bring money from bank to bKash. And then of course, the two major cards, Visa and MasterCard, are also there. You can pay NBRs, income tax, education fees. Government has been using this tool because of its efficiency, that you can send the money to the right person. And during the Corona time, many of you have noticed that government has used very efficiently. All the operators, bKash, Nagad, Rocket, they all came in, and government used that. And then I would say the RMG payroll, that's a very important one. It brought, in our case, around 1 million people are getting their salary every month through bKash. And then of course, the large usage is from the mobile operator. They do a significant part of their airtime. and then retail activities. People are making payments. So fundamentally, if we see that people are cashing in and then spend all this activity that I'm mentioning are where people are spending the money. And there's the perception that it's probably all probably cash in, cash out, but over the last 10 years, tremendous ecology has developed. Finally, I would say people are making donations. One of the important things about giving donation is the moment you would like to contribute, at that time you don't find the means to contribute. And now at your next to your, while you're, at your hands, you have a mechanism. You can use bKash to give donation to Anjuman Mahfidul Islam or Muktijota Museum. So NGOs have been collecting their MFI payment, microfinance payment through bKash. And finally, and the most importantly, I want to point out the remittance service that people can now bring money straight from overseas. And we work as the last mile solution provider for the banks. So the banks handle the nostro-vostro arrangement, and when the money comes to Bangladesh, we handle the local currency, and the money goes to the specific person. So if you see this entire landscape in last 10 years, it has evolved a lot. It has really, and I must give the thanks to the government coming up with the vision, and of course central bank for following the structure and giving us the direction, and that how do we provide the service under strict discipline and regulation. And one most important thing Bangladesh has done is allowing agent network to operate. And in the case of Bangladesh, having this, in our case, 280,000 retail agents across the country. So at any point within walking distance, you can find an agent. So that allowed anybody to take part. And of course, with smartphone and basic phone, even with a 1100 takar phone, you can use the service. So that makes the service and things to evolve and reach millions of people.
You're absolutely right. The current government and the regulator central bank has encouraged and made the necessary policy changes and infrastructure in place and the right licenses for this to evolve. And rightfully so, the ecosystem has evolved, widened, and moving just from a cash transfer into, we're moving into payments, remittance, and collections as well. Maybe at this stage, we can invite Mr. Rahel Ahmed, that maybe you could comment on the same thing in the same subject matter, but also maybe mention how it has evolved within the last 1 year, particularly due to COVID. And do you see this trend continuing and here to stay? Over to you, Rahel.
Thank you, Adil Bhai. Thanks to Valor Bangladesh for inviting us, and best of the regards to all the fellow panelists. Kamal Bhai has already set the tone. Definitely bKash being the maiden player or debut player in the market of this MFS, roughly about 10 years back from now. He has already explained on the whole ecosystem and how things have grown over the last decade. If I just pick up the story when Nagad started and how we have embedded into the system and how we have been contributing, as well as how things have shaped up in the last 1 year with regards to the COVID situation. Nagad came into play roughly about 2.5 years back. It was inaugurated by the Honorable Prime Minister as a part of the Digital Bangladesh vision. And from the very beginning, Nagad tried to make some differentiation in the market. We had seen before Nagad came in, we had seen number of players having MFS license, but it was kind of very much skewed and dominated by, for very good reasons, by the market leader. So Nagad, being a late entrant in last 2 years, tried to create some technological disruption, I would say, through innovation. The first was the digital KYC, the introduction of digital KYC. And we have seen that digital KYC being followed later by most of the financial institutions, as we see in the current times. And time and again, we tried to bring in some changes in the market, in the structure, in the pricing as well. The motto or the vision for Nagad had always been, since it's being a government service, as you know, it's a service offered by the Bangladesh Post Office. We tried to make it as cost competitive or cost friendly for the end users. So in that respect, also we have seen a lot of work being done, and very welcomed by the end users over the last 1 year. To answer more specifically on your question with regards to how we have seen things happening in the COVID scenario, you may be recalling that Kamal Bhai has already touched on that. The G2P payments, like Honorable Prime Minister, when she decided to donate certain amount of funds for the COVID affected people during the COVID last year, we played a major role. I mean, we, along with other MFS players, the major ones, we played a major role. Similarly, for the ready-made garment manufacture, the RMG workers. For Nagad, I can also say that we are today responsible for distributing the primary student stipend given by the government, the 100% of it, and we are also very proudly distributing the social welfare benefits given by the Honorable Prime Minister. So in all these G2P cases, we have seen all these MFS players being utilized. At the same time, during the COVID, the transaction volume obviously had gone up. The other area where we are seeing a gradual increase is the merchant payment. This is one area where we are seeing some slow progress, but month-to-month basis, we are definitely seeing some good progress happening on that front. And from Nagad's side, what we are trying to do is basically trying to embed ourselves into a lifestyle of a person. And we're trying to kind of segregate between the urban and the non-urban population, and trying to see how we can be part of the lifestyle for all those individuals residing in whichever geography or demography they belong to. So that is the intention so far. And Alhamdulillah, the last 2 years story for Nagad has been extremely successful. So we look forward to a brighter future, inshallah.
Thank you, Rahel. Well articulated. I think I'd like to just borrow the last point that you've mentioned, that embed into the lifestyle, the fintech companies. 15, 20 years back, people would get up in the morning and say that, yeah, I want to go to a bank, or I want to do a transactions. But this has really evolved. No one gets up in the morning and plans to go to the bank. They either want to purchase something, they want to sell something, they want to pay something, they want to receive a payment. And that's how this fintech gets embedded into the lifestyle, and the combination of banking and technology as it merges into this fintech, and as the ecosystem widens, more and more convenience of transactions, payments, collections would come in. And this is where it would be very useful to invite Mr. Sajid in terms of help us to understand in context to the regional and international market and how evolved the fintech industry is there. How do we compare ourselves as a nation to that? And what kind of infrastructure and policy changes or enhancement would be required to reach that? Over to you, Sajid.
Thanks, Adil bhai. I think, before going into the fintech itself, one of the things that are now said is all companies are financial services company. Right? So, if you look at Gojek, which is the largest ride-sharing company in Indonesia, their wallet GoPay is as I recall, is the largest wallet in terms of digital transaction happening through that wallet. We are seeing Walmart, which is one of the largest retailers and now has gone in big e-commerce, are issuing cards. Right? We are seeing Google, going into the payment infrastructure. So clearly, all companies are becoming financial services companies in some way. So the way we can probably define fintech as a terminology is where financial services is at the core of the company. So whether it's Gojek, Walmart, they obviously have a big financial services component, but not at the core of the company. But when you talk about bKash or Nagad, these companies have financial services at the core, and then they probably can go into other peripheral services. Right? So I think if we now define fintech in that way, and then if we compare how our fintech ecosystem has developed in Bangladesh compared to some of the players in the region, I would say we are significantly behind. Now, in terms of payments, that's one part of the whole fintech ecosystem. We are probably far ahead than any country. I mean, I don't see, probably M-Pesa is one example, but there aren't very good examples of the way the level of penetration, the level of acceptance that bKash have achieved over the years. Right? So that's where I think our payment companies have really done well. But if you look at fintech in general, for example, InsurTech is pretty much non-existent. Right? We have some very big insurance companies. We hear of companies like Oscar. We hear of companies like Lemonade. So these are large mega companies, and we don't have anything called InsurTech, as far as I know. No startup in that space in Bangladesh. Wealth management, right? So we, there are companies like Wealthfront, which is a big time robo-advisors, and have I don't know, maybe $100 billion asset under management. We don't have any, any wealth management, offering any fintech in that space. If you think of lending, right? So, there are companies in India which are big on lending, SME lending, personal lending, P2P lending. We pretty much don't have big fintech play in the lending space. If you look at, in terms of, card issuance, in terms of buy now, pay later, which again is, is quite big and coming up with companies like Affirm, which actually provides lending at point of sales. So we don't have any such player in Bangladesh. So I think if you look at the fintech evolution in Bangladesh, there are clearly some companies which are miles ahead in the global context, but then there is huge open space, almost like a white space for people to take. Digital bank. I'm sure we'll cover it at some point, but you have companies like Nubank in Brazil or Monzo in UK. So there are big digital banks that have come across. Banks, even Vibe, which is basically essentially targeting the millennial Gen Z populations, and developing a bank specifically for them. Within the region, Singapore has, last year they came up with a digital banking guideline, and we know 4 companies were given, or 5 companies were given the license to launch digital bank in Singapore. But of course, I think that's a big opportunity in case of Bangladesh. So clearly, there's I would say there's an open space for anyone to take who can really execute and have the vision to do it. In terms of the regulatory side, now that's I think first of all, obviously, there needs to be some clear regulations on different framework, right? And even countries like Singapore actually launched the digital banking framework last year, if I recall correctly, or in 2019. Malaysia then followed that in last year. So, so it's not like they're many years. We're talking about 2-3 years gap, and I'm sure that's something Bangladesh Bank or Bangladesh can do very quickly. So that's one. Then, of course, the question comes in. We are. Question is that what extent we need this fintech grow. We can do some. Singapore has some very interesting sandbox concept where they bring in different startups and actually put them together to develop the ecosystem. So there is a lot of things that we can do in that space also from a regulatory angle. But in general, I think one of the big challenges for fintech in general globally is the balance sheet is still held by the banks. We can talk about billion-dollar fintechs, but they still don't take that balance sheet risk yet. So I think that's a question that needs some clarification in Bangladesh context in as these fintechs go in, especially in lending space, how they will play, what sort of the framework they need to follow, and what sort of licensing they need for all these more complicated financial products.
You bring about some thought-provoking concepts and things to ponder and think about. Before we go to our distinguished panelist, Mr. Almas Kabir, I'll leave some thoughts for Rahel, Kamal, and Sajid to think about before I come back to you. Here's the scenario. Mr. Karimullah walks into a TV or a motorbike shop in a village in Tangail, and there's a kiosk there where we are able to verify through the tablet placed there either by a bank or by a fintech company that through the eKYC that he is indeed Mr. Rahmatullah, that he's come for the purchase, and he fills out his information in that pad in the application, or the shopkeeper helps him to do that, and that application goes off into one of your companies or to a bank, and through the criteria algorithm, it comes back with an approve or a decline. If it is approved, the motorbike needs to be insured, or the TV needs to be insured. At the same time, there's another app through which they would go into to purchase the insurance. And all this is done over there. The thought that I'd like to leave behind with you, that do we currently have the capabilities and the infrastructure to do this? If so, why isn't it happening? And also, do you think that all the information that was typed in is well protected and maintained confidential? So I'll leave this scenario with the three of you, and I'll move to Mr. Almas Kabir. Almas, welcome. Thank you for joining. Almas, maybe I leave a very open question for you, or a topic for you, that given what you've heard by the three frontline business CEOs, do you think we have the right policies, the infrastructure, and the framework to enhance and increase their volume of transactions? That's question number one. And number two, the scenario that I've just explained, what sort of changes or additions that we need to move to that? Over to you, Almas.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks for inviting me here, and good to see you all my friends over here. Well, of course, I would say we have come a long way in fintech. That's for sure. And I really want to thank the central bank for giving out making policies that has helped us to come so far. And we have seen the proliferation of the MFS, the mobile financial services, that has helped the financial inclusion. I think it's around maybe 56 to 60% now, but that has happened only because of the central bank's policy and because of the popularity of the mobile financial services. Yes, of course, we have a lot more to do. The first thing that comes to my mind is we have few service providers already. As you know, we have two present over here, the two CEOs from bKash and Nagad. So we need the interoperability between these services, which this is very, very important for the consumers. I might have a bKash account, but I should be able to pay a merchant who is accepting Nagad. So this kind of interoperability has to be there. I know the government is working on it. ICT division has taken a project on this, and I believe that the target is to finish it and launch it within this year. So if that happens, I would say the transaction will become even more popular. Another thing that I foresee that worldwide, as you all very well know, that the digital wallet concept, the intermediary wallet concept, is actually losing popularity. So it's actually, it will be like transferring from the customer's bank account to the merchant's bank account directly. So this is how it will happen. So these service providers will should be able to do that, and I would really love to see that happening in Bangladesh as soon as possible. Another thing is very important, that the data privacy and data localization. The data privacy, by the way, before I go into that, I just want to comment on the scenario that you have just proposed to the other three panelists about a person going to a rural shop and fill up the information and opens a bank account and then goes into buying a motorcycle and then insuring it. We have the infrastructure except about the insurance part. I think Sajid has already mentioned this, that we do not have our insurance companies have not invested in InsurTech, and I also have not seen any startup going into this InsurTech or taking advantage of InsurTech. This is a very big vacuum that we have, and from Basis, we have been talking about this. We have been working on this. We will be organizing a roundtable and a workshop with all the stakeholders, related stakeholders, that how we can make the InsurTech even more popular. But except for that, whatever you have described about a person going there, filling up an KYC form or anything, that is actually already happening. Some of the banks have been doing it for the last few years through agent banking. I know Bank Asia is doing it very well. Actually, I think they are the largest in this. Islamic Bank, the Islamic Bank is doing it. Some other banks are also doing it. So it's already there. And thanks to Nagad, as Rahel said rightly, that they started the electronic KYC, so you could just take the picture of the NID and send it, and you can open the account. Recently, the government has also started the Porichoy service. The Porichoy service is, as you know, that you can verify your identity through the NID database with the Election Commission. So that I believe that these fintech companies, the banks, and also the non-banking financial institutions, they will take full advantage of this Porichoy service. Now, let me come back to the data privacy and localization. This is very, very important. Central Bank has a mandate that all banks must keep the data within the geographic location of Bangladesh. Of course, there are one or two banks like Standard Chartered. I'm not sure about HSBC, probably so. They have taken special permission to do it otherwise. But there is a mandate. Interestingly, the ICT policy that has been gazetted in 2018, that also includes this line saying that all data has to reside within the geographic location of Bangladesh. So this is very important. What we have been doing from Basis is, in recent times, we have actually made a set of recommendations for the government and sent to the ICT division to formulate a data privacy policy. We have taken examples, the best practices from European Union, from India, from Australia, and other places, and we have recommended those best practices, and with the the local customs we have also considered in mind. So basically, what we really recommend to do is categorize data according to the sensitivity. So there can be like extremely sensitive data, like maybe your name, your medical history, just for an example. So those sensitive data, you have to keep them within the geographic location, and you cannot keep them outside Bangladesh. Similarly, there could be some less sensitive data which you can have a mirror copy in a foreign location, or there can be another set of data that they are not so sensitive and not that important, so that you can keep anywhere. So there has to be 3 to 4 categories of data. So that is very, very important. Problem is that many people, actually I would say most people, even in the government, even the technical people, many technical people, they confuse data privacy with data protection. I mean, data security. So I would love to give an example for those who are listening here. Data security is, suppose you are living in you are inside a room. It's inside a glass room, surrounded by glass walls, bulletproof glass walls. So you are secured. So your security is ensured, but your privacy is not. People can see you. So that is the difference between the data privacy and data security. So data privacy, the government, I don't know why government is taking so much time, but it is high time that we formulate and publish the guideline of data privacy. At the same time, about data security, you would be very surprised to know that we have a very high duty, customs duty on security software and hardware. Like firewall, there is, if you calculate all the duty, the VAT, the AIT or supplementary duty, everything, it comes to nearly 69%, which is very, very high. And now when we are supposed to build our infrastructure, we are building different networks. We really need to have enough firewall, enough security devices, enough security software to protect our network. And at that time, the government has still imposed such a high duty. So this is definitely one of the one of the top reasons why many networks are not well protected. The many networks owners, they think that, okay, I can have just a small firewall and that will do. But actually that doesn't do the job. Maybe that person needs a bigger firewall. That network might need 3 firewalls, but they don't because of the high price of these software and tools and appliances. So just before coming into this webinar, I was in a meeting with the NBR chairman, and I have proposed about this to consider again, in the upcoming budget, and we can just keep our fingers crossed. So that's the security thing, and I really think that the fintech and the banks, service providers, they must ensure the data security. Otherwise, the consumers, the general people, they will not have enough confidence in these institutions. We hear about the bank heist and all the data hackings and everything. Almost every month. So that thing is very, very bad for proliferation of fintech. So that has to be addressed, and that a government has a big role to play in that. So this is what I want to just stop here. Maybe we can discuss some more later.
Valid points, all of them, and very well articulated, and with the example of the glass house between data privacy and data security. I just want to elaborate just on that point, maybe borrow that from you. I think the government and the regulator, the central bank, has done a tremendous job in terms of inclusiveness in the finance and banking sector by introducing MFS, encouraging fintech, and issuing all the necessary licenses and giving us the infrastructure. I think maybe what you're saying is something to consider, is that for it to move to the next level, I think the consumers to do those kind of transactions would want to have a protection on their data, in the privacy of the data. And I know many countries have good regulation, particularly Singapore, around that, how that data is not only protected, but how the consumer gets their protection in the privacy. So as an example of that, maybe is that if you have shopped in a certain shop and have given that information, will that data be shared with a third party, and they will trade on that data, and your information, your name, your date of birth, or your email address gets open for further circulation. which is not only a privacy violation, but can make you vulnerable into your IT-related transactions. So I think that's a very good point you make, and inshallah we'll see how that space evolves with your leadership and the others. Coming back to Rahel, Kamal and Sajid, maybe Rahel, you want to pick up on the point that I left with you last.
Thank you. As Almas bhai already said, I mean, already the infra is there, and bits and pieces it's happening. And Sajid bhai rightly mentioned that insurance is definitely, in your example, the piece which is still unresolved is the insurance piece. So definitely there is more to do on that front. And just to give a summarized response or a concise response to the example that you have cited, is that it can't only be done by a standalone bank or an MFS or that motorcycle manufacturing company itself. So we need more of a collaboration amongst all relevant stakeholders. And that is what I have seen in my limited experience while I was in my banking role before, also is that we somehow remain within a culture which slowly is changing, though, is we don't collaborate as much as we should be. We all try to do things from our own point and on our own. We try to do everything on our own. So this is the time, or this is the era where collaboration is the name of the game. So we, from our side, we can do something up to an extent, and the rest needs to be done by the other person. So it has to be a very well coordinated relay race. Your example is the future, and that is already happening in bits and pieces, as we said, but we need to see more of that to be happening. In terms of creating the convenience, I mean, Almas bhai rightly mentioned the Porichoy, the national ID database and everything. So, you know, this part, like we pioneered in the digital KYC process, and we have also collaborated with telcos, and we have created the convenience for even bar phone users to become, to open their wallet in Nagad in a much more convenient way. And we have seen how things have changed there and how the user friendliness has come in, and we have seen a lot of, you know, traction in our acquisition. So now when we go to the next step, and as bKash has already started that nano lending in that space they have entered, this is something that needs to be done more and more. So I think collaboration can, you know, easily make this example more lively in coming days.
I think we'll have to have an open architecture where we all collaborate and we do what we do best and collaborate with the others in terms of their areas of expertise. And it was an interesting point that Almas was making, that he foresees in future the wallet usage may be shrinking at some stage, and it'll be more from an account to a merchant, the transfer being made. This may be an ideal point to sort of pause and reflect and ask Kamal bhai that how do you see the not 2 to 3 years, but 5 years and beyond, or maybe 4 years and beyond, in terms of the evolution of the fintech company, you being a pioneer in the country, and where do you see it moving into? So something like, do you become a bank, or can you do the type of transactions that a bank is doing? In the payment space, in the loan space, would you like to have a balance sheet? Over to you.
So to answer your question first, let me just go to the first phase, that where do we see next 3 to 5 years where things will be happening. I think one of the major area of development would be artificial intelligence, and it's just purely the processing capacity across the world is becoming cheaper and cheaper, and also the data capacity is also becoming very powerful in people's hand. So while people have, people will be, whatever decision we are making today, based on this data, people will have, much more convenient and far more customer-centric application. I mean, I'll just give an example that you pay utility bill of, say, your power bill, and then system will be looking at and seeing your data and say, do you want to pay for your water bill? So that's just a very basic AI example, but it can go very advanced level. And I think what's happening across the world, we should be hoping, and we should be, in fact, demanding that that should be applied to customers in Bangladesh as well. So there is, in this sense, that technology is relatively flat. So just because it's developed in the US or China or somewhere else in the world, Bangladeshis should be also able to avail that within days or within months. So application of AI definitely will be something very much at an advanced level for fraud management, for customer convenience, and all kind of things. Now, coming back to, you mentioned about our nano lending program with Citibank. See, if you look at the way the current regulation is central bank looked at it and said, customers' data protection, customers' fund flow protection. As long as those things are assured, okay, I think the first phase is you can provide loan using the the balance sheet of a bank. Now, going forward, if the essential ingredients of a financial intermediaries are adequately developed, okay, I mean, that I'm talking about transaction history that gives the confidence of central bank that these institutions also can provide lending. Of course, I think that opportunity will come, and when that happens, it's a combination of the government, central bank, their assessment, and our hard work and our capacity to deliver it. So if I look at the last 10 years of journey in terms of technology, in terms of AML and CFT strengthening, for example, how do you really make sure that anti-money laundering and terrorist financing are managed? If those things can give central bank the sense of assurance, internal control, treasury finance, and all the basic ingredients of banking, then the ingredients are there, and then only thing is creating convenience to customer and at a lower cost, because the moment you are doing with another partnership, cost goes up. So if these elements that we are just mentioning, if these things all come together, and I think last 10 years of our operation and central bank's observations has demonstrated that it has come to a sense of a level of maturity. So given that, if the opportunity comes, definitely we would like to play a more active role in bringing those loans to our own balance sheet and making sure that customers can be given the best service at a very low cost.
Thank you, Kamal. Thank you for sharing that vision. Sajid, maybe you'd like to join the stage and share your thoughts on how, going forward, in the fintech, what is the money making model? Meaning, where do you make the profit? Where do you make the money? Because, and I'll give you a cue, in terms of payments, margins are going to go narrower and narrower and narrower until it gets less and less attractive. And at some stage, bank buys the fintech, or the fintech buys the bank, and it merges. And you know what I'm talking about. So at this stage, I'd like to pick your brain in terms of, in the next level, where does, and I'm not talking about macro, socio, macro economic perspective of inclusiveness. the question is coming more from a P&L angle, Sajid. How does one make money in the fintech company going forward? And do you have any other vision in terms of other kind of fintech business, where and how we can make money? Over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Adil. One thing, the example that you gave, I don't know, I might be wrong, but let's say if that individual needed to take a loan at that particular point, do we have the infrastructure to provide loan to them, i.e. the credit scoring? Obviously with Porichoy, that might be the digital identity, which needs to be connected with credit bureau, which needs to be connected with, in many cases, the person won't have anything on the credit bureau. So the credit scoring needs to develop based on his or her social media or some other proxy. And then that credit scoring needs to go to that point of sale on that particular moment and provide him a loan. So I don't know whether we have the infra to do that at this stage, but clearly, that's something we can, obviously, the pieces need to be put together to make that happen. In terms of the, how fintechs can be profitable, so that's probably, I don't know, maybe $1 billion question. So Stripe, which is now probably the highest valued private company at $95 billion as per the last funding a few weeks back. So they came up, their philosophy is very ambitious, or their goal. They say, we want to increase the GDP of internet. Now, when they started, which sounds very lofty, right? Increase the GDP of internet. So the whole idea was that they're saying we are going to equip every company just by adding a code to help facilitate the payments. And as they help facilitate the payments across the internet, then of course, the GDP of the internet goes up. So, I was, quite interestingly, I was looking at some of the fintech companies, loss in India that they made. Companies which are, growing probably, I don't know, 10%, 20% every week, but all are loss making, significantly, serious numbers. So in terms of business model, one direction maybe how banks make money. So the banks make money. Now, if you take out all the infrastructure costs of a bank, large branches, expensive individuals, salaries. Now, if you take, those are the two main costs, the salaries and then of course the infrastructure. Now, the banks make money by the the margin on the balance sheet mostly. There is a big fee income, but I don't know what to extent. A fee income related to payments will be sustainable, but fee income related to wealth management and other products, which is much more valued, may be sustainable. So I think for a fintech to make money, they need to have a set of spread on the balance sheet. That can be one. I would assume HR costs in a fintech would be relatively low because the number of people would be less. Of course, per person may be higher. But then, a fintech can always play with equity and bring down the cost, the fixed salary cost. So that can be second. The third, maybe, to go in and do some of these value like wealth management and others, which purely from a banking point of view, is very good fees, good fee income. So I think those are the couple of combinations that may make a fintech. The bigger challenge, of course, for fintechs is the competition, right? So we are seeing companies that are coming into fintech space are usually very competitive and are attacking each other. So mostly to gain market share. And the whole idea is that once you're big enough, you can start, dictating the price, but that doesn't happen all the time, as we've seen in history. So unless a fintech can create that level of network effect where they have a group of customers with high ARPU, as we all know in banking, 2-3 products per customer with mostly fee and a big balance sheet margin, that's probably the only way to make it happen. But the challenge for fintech is in the model. When people set up a banking business, they put up this capital branches, but over time, over 4 or 5 years, it's not the plan is to go to a market listing and then probably the shareholders exit. In case of fintech, because they're under so much pressure for high growth and the VC money keeps pumping in, and the aim has always been growth rather than the P&L. in many cases. So then, it becomes a very vicious circle. And that's where I think most of the fintechs are stuck.
Sajid, thank you for being so candid upfront and well articulate. All the points are very well made. And at the very beginning, you did mention on that particular example. So if I could borrow what you said, what Rahel has said, what Almas has said on that point, I think most likely in the example that I shared with you, all the infrastructure and policies are in place. I have looked into it. I think maybe Rahel has made the point, or you've made the point. Not everyone is talking to each other, one another, and it's not joined up. So once the bank, the KYC, the CID, and the fintech, and the producer and the seller are joined up, I think that service is very much possible in theory because the infrastructure is there. So I think I'll probably close that point. But there's another point that you bring about, Sajid, which is the competition and the erosion of margin. And volume doesn't necessarily translate into always profit. So I think this is an interesting point. Kamal Bhai said that, why not get into balance sheet? Why not make that margin? So maybe the future is that banks and fintechs at some stage will become one in terms of services that is offered, because the points you made, Sajid, are quite relevant. One was reduction of admin and HR cost. You mentioned efficiency and more volume, and you mentioned margin. So those are equally applicable to a bank as well. So therefore, I think going forward, we'll probably see fintech terminology will be synonymous with providing finance and financial solutions to the customer, which I think Rahel at the very beginning said, getting into the lifestyle or embedding it into the lifestyle. And I think that's probably the future. Thanks for that. Almas, I know DESIS has taken, and then we read about it, a lot of leadership, particularly during your time, in formulating the policies, in engaging with the right stakeholders and taking it to the next level. What you've heard today from this discussion, and also given your involvement and outlook in the industry, do you have feedback from the society? So the question is in twofold for you. One is, do you have the feedback from society, the user society, what is expected, what do they expect of the fintech and major local payments companies here, and also that's from the user angle. And as a leader from BASIS, as the president, do you have a certain request or certain expectation of the industry players? Over to you.
Yeah, thanks again. Well, of course, the general expectation of the users is that to have the commission rate to be revised downwards, definitely, when they are using the mobile financial services especially. That will definitely, if they do not have to pay that commission, or if they need to pay the reduced commission, then that will definitely help them or encourage them use the digital financial services more and more. Having said that, what we have done recently, in the last 6 or 9 months, or about 1 year during the pandemic, we have seen the popularity of online shopping had gone up. Everybody was using online shopping, and you will be glad to know that the digital financial services, the digital transaction, which was about 15% of online purchases, that went up to 25 to 30%. So that has doubled. in these during the lockdown. So people started using credit cards online. People started using the mobile financial services, and that has definitely gained a lot of momentum. And if we want to keep this momentum going of the popularity of digital financial services and advance towards the coveted cashless society, or rather less cashless society, then we must incentivize that use of digital financial services. So what we have done, I have sat personally with the Bangladesh Bank governor and the relevant people in the central bank, and also with the finance secretary, and proposed them officially that the government must consider giving a cash incentive, a cash back incentive for usage of digital financial services, whether it is by credit card, whether it's by mobile financial services. Our proposal is to give 5% cash back from the government, 2.5% to the merchant, 2.5% to the purchaser. In that case, both the purchaser and the merchant will be encouraged to use and accept digital financial services. So, and the government can have this announce this incentive for the next 5 years or whatever period. But if that can be done immediately, this momentum of this the digital financial services proliferation, that will definitely take us a long way. So that we have already done, and we have sat with the central bank. Fortunately, everybody actually has been very, very supportive about it. They have agreed with me on this proposal, but we really need to work more, and how to go about it. We really need to do that. Also, we have been talking to the NBR. We have proposed to the NBR that any kind of digital transactions should be exempted from VAT. That will also encourage people to use the digital services instead of paying cash. So this is, digital transactions instead of paying cash. So that is, we are lobbying with the NBR that, again, maybe it could be for 3 years or for the next 5 years. So if it is exempted from tax, if it's a digital transaction, then again, the consumers will be more and more encouraged to use the digital financial services. Also, Kamal knows this very well, that we have been working on an escrow service, introducing an escrow service in Bangladesh, especially for the online purchases. So I think if that comes into being, then that will also take our fintech a long way forward and make the digital transactions even more popular. So what I really want to see is that more and more young, innovative fintech companies coming into, not necessarily service providers, but solution providers, should come into the business, into the industry, with the frontier technologies that Kamal mentioned about the AI or the machine learning. Because AI machine learning has to be there to make the user experience and the user interface much more friendlier, much more easier. I'll just give you an example. There is one, when we generally buy things online, what happens is that when we give the credit card number, it takes us to a gateway, then an OTP comes, I have to put the OTP in, then again, there are like several steps back and forth, and then I get the confirmation. So this actually discourages many customers using the credit card. They just want, say I'll go for cash on delivery. So what can be done, and it has been done by very few online merchants, that once you are verified, and if you, of course, the data security has to be ensured, it has to be PCI DSS insured, certified. Then what you can do is you can just choose, you can say pay, and that's it. No OTP, nothing. It actually takes care of the transactions much more securely, and it does not give you any hassle. So those are the innovations we need in the fintech that I would really love to see, to make the user interface, the user experience much more smoother and much more friendlier, much more easier. So that is very, very necessary. And again, use of technology is necessary there. And we from the industry are encouraging our members, our member companies, to use more and more of these frontier technologies in different solutions they are providing. Thank you.
Thank you, Almas. Is there any other points or topics that I didn't get a chance to ask you or you wanted to comment on at this stage before we close? Kamal bhai? I think you're mute, Kamal bhai.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
So one thing I would like to make, a point I would like to make is that the sense of collaboration is actually going on and at a very good pace. And if you look at that, the number of banks and MFS collaboration, if you count every day how many people are actually pulling the money from bank account to MFS accounts, and if you put it together, that how many ATM uses has been reduced, or how many tellers uses has not been occupied engaging into this thing, it's bringing tremendous efficiency. And if you can project where it will be going, and as more and more people will be banked, these collaborations are actually going to hit the balance sheet of the both institutions. Okay, so I think and increasingly, I think banks are recognizing that there is no competition between fintech and banks. I think there's a tremendous collaboration going on. The way MFS like us are bringing resource from the ground, which was not otherwise been in the formal ecology or formal economy. Okay, and now we're bringing that money and putting that into formal economy and giving it the money to the banks. I think that is a tremendous evidence that there is collaboration, and those collaborations are generating already very good results. I mean, you are giving the motorcycle buying example, but I can give you that today, if somebody wants to, somebody has a Sonali Bank account, and 3 in the morning they want to deposit some money in their Sonali Bank account. Okay, they can open the account, MFS account, or say bKash account 3 in the morning by themselves. They can put their money in, and they can put that money straight to their Sonali Bank account, no matter how far their account is from their house. So that kind of arrangement is happening already in Bangladesh, and therefore the collaboration model that we're talking about is very real. It's not a futuristic thing, and the interoperability that we have explored even in this discussion is very real. I mean, it is. The connectivities are done. It would be deployed as soon as the systems are everybody feels comfortable with it. So going forward, I think I mean, we are not really looking at a futuristic days. It's pretty much we're living in the current world, and I think that's something I just wanted to point out.
No, thank you for making that point. Anyone else? Yes, Rahel?
I just wanted to make one or two comments here. In general, I mean, just taking cue from what Kamal bhai said earlier, what Sajid bhai and Almas bhai mentioned. I mean, if we look at the MFS space itself, and if we look at the total MFS account holders as we speak, I mean, still there is a lot of vacuum space out there. I mean, if you look at the adult population of the country, roughly about 50% of them currently holds an MFS wallet account. And the teenage population, as we say, the soon-to-be adult, if we take that into consideration, that is yet to be, taken into that space as well. What we need to see within the MFS space, like we have seen a lot of integration, say utility payments and everything, as we always talk about. But as you very briefly mentioned, is that the open architecture has to come in. I mean, even the government utility companies, they need to be more open. The APIs need to be more, robust and agile, so that what the AI that Kamal bhai mentioned, that even if you are having a Nagad app or a bKash app, within the app you will have a notification that your bills are getting due or something like that. So these sort of developments needs to be done. And on the government side, the opportunity that we see is that the G2C payments, all sorts of G2C payments, could be made, through a very transparent process through the MFS. So within the MFS space, definitely there's a lot to be done. Just taking cue from what Almas bhai said, is that definitely that subsidy or incentive, if that comes into play, that will open up another huge frontier. I mean, Bangladesh Bank has recently started off with this micro merchant guideline or initiative. I mean, this is one frontier where I'm sure these sort of incentives will help both the payment service providers as well as the end consumers to, use more on this front, as well as the merchants. But to summarize the whole thing, I think digital bank, as we had briefly touched on, is something which is the call of the time. I mean, it's right time where it should offtake any day now, and it's any of us or through collaboration. We should be able to do that, and that will possibly take one of these fintechs into the space where Sajid bhai very nicely mentioned where a fintech could be profitable or can be making money. We know of super apps, we know of digital banks making money elsewhere as well. I mean, there are many of the digital banks who are not making money, but there are digital banks as well who actually are making money, and some of them have started making money in 2-3 years' time. So, keeping fingers crossed, and this is possibly the area which is the call of the time.
Well, thank you. Well said. I think fintech will most likely evolve into the digibank. I think that is the future, and the policymakers and regulators in the country have been very, very supportive and encouraging on this, and maybe we'll get something soon. Thank you. Sajid, did you want to add anything before we close?
We are already covered, but my request to Almas bhai and the other regulators, on a group basis to regulators, would be, fintech, obviously, we really need to look at other space of the fintech. InsurTech, you obviously mentioned. There are many other spaces in fintech besides the payment. So, we really need to look in how to encourage those areas, because otherwise the ecosystem will not be complete. Another thing we probably we didn't cover to a large extent today is blockchain and how it's going to impact the whole fintech payments and other space, right? So probably this is a bigger topic for another discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we all recognize and show respect to the government and the regulator leadership in evolving traditional banks and to a more open architecture, and the way they're formulated policies to go into agent banking, MFS, for more inclusiveness, and it has helped the nation, and it has helped to grow the GDP as well. I think now for it to move to the next level, instead of calling it AI or blockchain, I think these are very technological terms. If I could simply say that we need value-added solutions, and the value-added solutions will only come through the AI and blockchain at this stage. Otherwise, it will be simply a payments company, and in the payments company, the margins will come lower and lower and lower. So therefore, for it to move to the value-added solution, we will need to take advantage of the AI and blockchain for it to move to the next level. And also, which Sajid, you've touched upon one or two times or hinted at, that we do need to consider other avenues or rather other sectors within the fintech, like insurance and others, for us to make money. And also, Kamal has highlighted, and one or two of you have mentioned, that maybe there is opportunity, and definitely opportunity, for going into building a balance sheet, be it through the DG bank or into your own company. So I think all those will lead for us to the next level, and it's a huge potential market, particularly because of the the way our demography is and our age bracket is, it's a huge potential. So I want to acknowledge all your presence and adding value and giving us direction and participating in this topic of Fintech and MFS. And of course, thank you to Valor of Bangladesh for arranging the session for all of us to be here and discuss. Thank you very much, and have a very pleasant evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adil Islam, for your powerful moderation. And thank you, MasterCard, for being the sponsor of this panel, Fintech and MFS.